Hey everybody, I'm Dana.
Hello, I'm Madison. Cool. And like all of you in the room, we make maps. Cool. So I'm a designer on Mapbox's marketing team. I make maps that are fun and not super useful, but they look cool and we get likes on Instagram. So the map design process that I go through involves 4 major steps: ideation, curation, implementation, and iteration. I made those 4 steps rhyme specifically for this talk. Cool. So the very first step, ideation, looks a lot like this graphic, whichever way you're looking. And during the ideation step, I try to figure out what the map ought to be both visually and conceptually. Inspiration can come from just about anywhere. If you're anything like me, you have 100 or more very bad ideas before you have one idea that you feel okay sharing with your manager and hoping very much that legal will approve it. To help filter through these ideas, I ask myself 3 questions. Will people learn something from this map about the world? Will they learn something about cartography? And will they look at the world just a little bit differently after viewing this map? Now, quite literally, this process is very messy. It is several browser tabs, a bunch of untitled Adobe files, a few fonts, and a bunch of articles ranging from everything from City Lab to pop culture. A deliverable of this step might look something similar to this. You can see that the themes, colors, and textures of the image have been abstracted out into that color palette. And then that's actually a final map that is not part of this step. But this is kind of like showing you the process of what comes out of the ideation step. And then once I've committed to an idea, I begin to the curation step. In this step, the goal is to figure out what the map wants to be. I usually have a few fonts, a color palette, data, perhaps a proof of concept map, and a couple sentence intention for the map. The intention is critical to keep the map design tight. When designing for the entire world, it's very easy to get lost in designing a specific region or a type of place, such as urban or rural. The iteration draws back, or the intention draws back to the goal of teaching the audience about the world. Cool. In this curation step, it's usually well documented through a map taxonomy chart. These charts are as simple or as detailed as I need them to be when describing the map to another person, and also help keep the map design consistent. This map in particular focuses on physical geography and different landforms. So this taxonomy chart showcases the landform features that relate to one another. Cool. This map is largely a texture and icon-heavy map. So the features you can see in the chart are based off of the different iconography. And then in the top corner, there's a couple sentences you can see that is a written out intention of the map to help kind of consistently reminding myself of what this map is supposed to look like and is supposed to feel like. Cool. In the past few charts, I've been adding a mini map to the project. This mini map is a fictitious place that succinctly includes all major features, colors, icons, and fonts on the map on a single image. This helps me see all the design elements work together across regions and zoom levels. It's nearly impossible to critically view every inch of the map, so there might be features that you don't expect to be next to each other, so you can kind of see how these relate to each other as you play around with designing a mini-map. After that, I move on to the implementation stage. This is where I actually start making the map. Most of the map work is done in Mapbox Studio. For any pre-processing data that might occur in something such as QGIS or another GIS tool. For most Mapbox maps, we try to keep the source is low so that users can add more of their own data and kind of style it that way. In Mapbox's primary map design tool, Mapbox Studio, I use these 3 main debugging tools. On the leftmost, it would be the collision boxes. to kind of see what features are visible and then what has been filtered out. The middle one is the overdraw inspector to see if the white kind of indicates a density of features, and then the black indicates where features aren't very present. So just want to make sure that what you're seeing in the density of features relates to the actual place. And then finally, if you have custom data, the tile boundaries to make sure that the data is aligned at the boundaries. And then finally, the last step is iteration. And then in this step, it is a lot of review and refinement of the map. I thought it was kind of weird to take a screenshot of my coworkers in Google Hangouts, so I don't have an image. But a lot of this time involves one-on-one and group time. It's very helpful to have as many eyes as possible on the map because everyone has very special places to them, and they have a very strong local knowledge of different areas that they'll view into the map and can tell you if what you've created accurately represents how they understand the world. So yeah, once this final step is complete, we send the map out to everyone. Yeah, cool. So now Dana is going to dig a little bit deeper into how our team has thought about the pain points of the implementation step.
Hey everybody, so I'm Dana and I'm a designer and a developer on our map design team, and one of the things that we work on is Mapbox Studio. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what it looks like to bring a map to life in Studio and how we're thinking about improving this experience. So Madison talked about the process of charting out a visual style guide alongside the implementation of the map itself. But it can be pretty hard to carry this process over into Studio, which is Mapbox's custom map design tool pictured here. Studio gives you global design control of the entire world down to street level. And while each layer on the map is individually customizable, this layer-by-layer approach can make maintaining comprehensive design organization in the tool pretty difficult. So you end up having kind of a one-way flow between design planning and design execution with little room for the natural detours of an iterative design process, as Madison has described. So to reduce this number of steps between that first idea and a tangible map that you can call your own in Studio, we've been working on a set of features called style components. So style components is a collection of map style layers that can be themed by adjusting a few curated properties. So here are some examples of the components that we have started building. Terrain, which includes things like hill shading, contour lines and labels. Buildings, including footprints and 3D extrusions. Place labels like country labels, city labels, so on. And your road network, which includes your bridges, roads, tunnels, and everything in between. So map designers can add these to their map, mix and match them, and configure any of them to create a custom map. And these configurations can look like, changing the font of all your place labels at the same time, dragging a slider to make your highway shields bigger or smaller, or removing terrain if you maybe want a flatter look and a more performant map. So yeah, I don't want to say that maybe components make map design easier or faster. I don't think that's true, but some of the benefits of this process, you can have more modular starting points, sort of like a progressive disclosure of control, so you can start out with a few knobs and gradually go into the details as you want to. And then more balance between customization and smart defaults. So right now the experience in Studio is you start with one of our core styles and then you kind of are on your own. So we're hoping that we can guide you along a little bit further in this process of making a map that is your own. And just comparing this idea of components to the existing sort of unit of design, which is the layer. A map can have upwards of 100 layers, or at least our core styles do, each with a handful of options like the font, the size, the spacing between letters. So there's a lot to reason about there, and as a result, there's kind of a lot of room for human error. So with components, designers control the most meaningful parts of these layers and their properties as a system. So let's talk about a kind of like a holistic example of what it looks like to make a map with components. Imagine we're trying to make a monochrome map in Studio. So we start with a single color, and from there we add layers, creating contrast with subtle shifts in lightness and saturation. But it's kind of hard to get the picture of the whole map until we're all the way through. And then when we're finished, maybe we see that, oh, we actually wanted the green to be more saturated, or we pan over to a mountainous region and we see that the way that we have treated our hill shade doesn't look the way that we expected. So whatever the case may be, and this is really blown out so you can't see it, I apologize, but whatever the case, the tweaks needed to achieve this initial vision that we had for this map with layers can be pretty arduous, and then the implementation details as a result might distract us from the high-level design intent. So we thought about how we might cut down the number of steps that you have to take in this process, reducing the risk of error and hopefully increasing the possibilities of creative design iteration. So instead of hard-coded colors and static layers being the default, what if the map itself was responsive to user input and intent? This is where components come in. So components now kind of let you start out with these ready-to-go building blocks that surface the most meaningful choices, which in this case is color. Kind of the most fun parts of the design process, in my opinion. So we rewrote our light and dark styles as a series of functions, GL expressions, if you're familiar with Mapbox GL, that accept any color input. So you're seeing here, we're just like choosing any color we want. And then that single color is then lightened, darkened, saturated, and desaturated to color each unique feature on the map. And the result is a custom map with one choice. So you'll see it's not just like about, it's not just about like choosing that single color. We kind of this is what's happening behind the scenes. We're manipulating that color with some like subtle variations of lightness and saturation. The label flips when the color is light or dark, giving you the hopefully appropriate contrast. And if you wanted to make some tweaks, you could go into the layers from there. So similar expressions are powering other features that are coming with style components. So like font controls, density sliders for labels on the map, and more. So over the past year, this has been like a really exciting part of our process. It's really been changing the way that we've been designing maps internally. And soon we are going to be introducing style components and their options to Mapbox Studio. So here's a sneak peek of what's coming. This is the first time that we've shown it to an audience. It's just, as you see here, a simpler editing interface that prioritizes the most intuitive and impactful design controls. So you see here kind of this like up top, you have this simplified semantic interface with dealing with place labels that has a number of toggles and sliders. And then below you have this comprehensive color palette that shows you the scheme of your whole style. So these features are coming pretty soon. We are hoping to release them in a public beta at the end of this month. We're really excited about it, and we would love to kind of hear from all of you what you're making if you're using Studio, and how we can continue to improve the tool. So thank you so much for listening, and happy NACIS.